Thank you so much for joining us today for this chapter of time-hopping hero Ethan's First Leaps. We truly appreciate you taking the time to read along with us. Just a reminder that the English subtitles for this video are accurate, and YouTube offers some fantastic tools to enhance your learning. If needed, you can use the auto-translate function to view subtitles in your preferred language, Portuguese already provided on screen. You can also slow down the video playback speed if you'd like to listen more carefully. Thanks again for spending your valuable time with us. Enjoy the story. Time-hopping hero, Ethan's First Leaps. Copyright 2025. Chunking to Fluency. Chapter 9. The Abernathy Chronos. A year had passed since the night Billy delivered Clarabelle's impossible message to his father. The fear that had been Billy's constant companion was slowly becoming a thing of the past, replaced by a quiet sense of security. At 17, he and Ethan were not just best friends. They were a team, a small, intricate part of a family finally healing. The destructive cycle that had trapped Walter for so long was broken, replaced by a new pattern of love and respect. Billy felt a deep respect for his father, not just for the journey he was on, but for the man he was becoming. He saw Walter treat Martha with a tenderness she hadn't experienced in years. And their home was no longer a place of suffocating silence, but of genuine, if sometimes fragile, communication. Just last week, the three of them had gone to a ball game, a simple family outing that had felt like an impossible dream just a year ago. The pawn shop had become a hub of quiet purpose. Walter, using his rediscovered logistical mind, had become an invaluable partner to Thomas. Thomas, still teaching, but spending every free moment at the shop, had found in Walter not just an employee, but a trusted confidant. The two men, one a man of science and the other a man of order and stories, formed a surprisingly effective team, managing the day-to-day operations and discussing the larger, unspoken questions of the Abernathy legacy. It was in the workshop, surrounded by the echoes of Mr. Abernathy's genius, that Thomas, Billy, and Ethan gathered. The time machine, once a source of terrifying possibility, now felt like a part of them. A final, crucial piece of their journey was still missing. A way to formally acknowledge the man who had brought them all together. "I think it's time we gave it a name," Thomas said, his gaze resting on the intricate clockwork chronometer. "Something that honors his memory and his work." Billy and Ethan immediately agreed. After some thought, Billy looked at Thomas. "The Abernathy Chronos," he said, a smile finally breaking through the solemnity. "Chronos for time, Abernathy for the man who mastered it." Thomas nodded, a small smile on his face. "Perfect." As they celebrated this new name, a soft, ethereal light began to emanate from a small, previously unnoticed compartment on the chronometer. A holographic image of Mr. Abernathy flickered into existence, his face warm and his eyes twinkling with the same mischievous wisdom they all remembered. "Thomas, my boy," the hologram began, his voice surprisingly clear. "If you're seeing this, it means I've finally moved on to whatever comes next. This compartment, it was designed to activate after my passing. It holds my last hope, a final mission, a series of coordinates, a specific date and time in the future, materialized in the air. Go there. The item you seek is in my home, a small thing that will mean nothing to the future, but everything to the past. It will be our greatest hope. The message ended, leaving them in silence. The new coordinates glowing in the air. The Abernathy Chronos, now with a name and a renewed purpose, hummed to life. The boys and Thomas, filled with a new sense of adventure, set the coordinates and began their first mission together into the future. With a familiar lurch, they were gone. They rematerialized with a jolt. They were outside Mr. Abernathy's house, but not as they knew it. It was 2 decades in the future, and the world had a different feel to it. The house was overgrown, a relic in an otherwise futuristic landscape. They saw glimpses of the challenges this future faced, a city struggling with frequent dust storms and a quiet, somber feel that suggested a world grappling with loss. Inside, the house was a time capsule. Dust coated everything, but a small, ornate music box on the fireplace mantel seemed to be calling to them. It was a beautiful piece, but when they opened it, it contained not a tune, but an intricate, detailed schematic. It was a design for a self-sustaining power source, a marvel of engineering. Billy and Ethan looked at the schematic, confused by its complex symbols and lines. But then Walter, who had joined them for this first official mission, took a look. His eyes lit up. He saw not lines and symbols, but a perfect, logical flow. He understood the rhythm of its moving parts, the way the whole thing was meant to work. It was a problem of logistics, of putting pieces together in a precise order, and it was a language he knew better than anyone. It was clear that Mr. Abernathy had foreseen that Walter, with his unique mind, would be the key to understanding this. They returned to their own time, the schematic safely in their possession. They had not only honored Mr. Abernathy with a name, but had also fulfilled his final wish, taking the first crucial step towards securing a better future for their city. Walter Tipton, the once broken man, was now a hero in his own right, and his journey had come full circle. The pawn shop was no longer just a business. It was now the launching point for missions that would not only change the past, but protect the future, and Walter was an essential part of it all. The schematic, once it was laid out on the workbench in the present-day workshop, looked like a spiderweb of incomprehensible lines and symbols to Billy and Ethan. To Thomas, it was a glimpse of a future he could only dream of teaching his students, a masterpiece of theoretical engineering. But to Walter, it was a perfectly logical puzzle. He spent the next few days in a quiet, focused state, his attention to detail, a skill he'd honed on the railway lines a lifetime ago, now fully engaged. He ignored the pawn shop's customers, the ringing phone, and even the smell of Martha's fresh-baked bread. He simply studied the schematic. One evening, as the sun was setting and the workshop was bathed in a golden light, he called Thomas, Billy, and Ethan over. On the workbench, he had neatly arranged a series of old railway maps, some discarded gears from clocks he'd repaired, and a few small discarded pieces of copper wire. He tapped a finger on a specific, intricate junction on the schematic. "It's not just a power source," Walter explained, his voice low and full of a newfound authority. "It's a way to harness the natural kinetic energy of the city's old infrastructure. The old water mains, the disused gas lines, even the abandoned subway tunnels, they still have a certain hum, a vibration from the shifting earth. This device, this kinetic harvester, is designed to tap into that." Billy and Ethan listened, their eyes wide. Walter had not only understood the design, he had seen its application. "But what does it have to do with our future?" Billy asked, remembering the dusty, storm-ridden city they had just left. "Everything," Walter said, a flicker of true excitement in his eyes. "The schematic is incomplete. It's a key, not a lock. Mr. Abernathy didn't just give us a power source. He gave us a way to find something. This design, when overlaid with a topological map of the city, it points to a specific location." He carefully placed one of the old Topeka railway maps over the schematic. "A nexus point, a place where the vibrations are at their most powerful." He then showed them where his finger was pointing on the map, a point directly beneath the old abandoned city water tower. "In the future we just came from, the city was struggling with dust storms and a lack of resources," Walter continued. "This power source, it's a way to bring back what was lost, to purify the water, to harness clean energy, to find a way to make Topeka thrive again. The little music box didn't contain music, it contained a plan to save a city." For Billy, the world shifted again. His father, the man he once feared, was no longer just his dad. He was a partner in this impossible adventure, an indispensable mind with a unique skill set that no one else could offer. The time travel missions were no longer just about fixing the past. They were about building a better future. And Walter Tipton, the once lost man, was the first step in that journey. The team, now a cohesive unit of two distinct generations and two distinct disciplines, the theoretical science of Thomas and the grounded logistics of Walter, looked at the map. The old water tower, a rust-colored monument to a different era, stood in the distance, a familiar landmark they had never considered to be anything more. But now it was a beacon. "We can't just go digging," Thomas said, bringing his scientific mind back to the present problem. "It's public property. We'll need a reason." "A reason," Walter mused, a small smile playing on his lips. "I've been going through old city archives, looking for old railway maps, and I came across something about the water tower. It was decommissioned because of a seismic shift that cracked the foundations. The city sealed it up a long time ago. We just need to go there to assess the structural integrity of the old foundations for a future project. We are, after all, now partners of the Abernathy Pawn Shop and owners of a lot of property in the area. We have a perfectly legitimate reason to be there." Walter had not only understood the schematic, he had already anticipated the logistical challenges of their next mission. He was thinking like Mr. Abernathy, but with a practical edge honed by a lifetime of working with tangible things. The next day, Thomas, Billy, and Ethan, accompanied by Walter, made their way to the base of the old water tower. With official-looking documents from the pawn shop in hand, they bypassed the chain-link fence and ventured into the sealed-off underbelly of the structure. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rust. Walter, with a lantern he had refurbished, led the way, his eyes sharp and his mind already at work. Following the precise location on the old map, they found a small, reinforced metal hatch embedded in the concrete floor. It was old, corroded, and clearly hadn't been opened in a very long time. "This is it," Walter said, running his hand over the rusted metal. "The nexus point, where the vibrations are strongest." Working together, they managed to pry the hatch open, revealing a dark, musty space below. As they lowered themselves down, the air became eerily still, and there, in the center of the small chamber, was not a hidden treasure or a grand mechanism, but a single, unremarkable metal sphere. It was about the size of a bowling ball, unadorned and silent. "What is it?" Ethan whispered, a bit disappointed. Walter, however, was already a step ahead. He pulled out the schematic they had retrieved from the future and held it next to the sphere. The symbols, lines, and patterns on the schematic weren't a design for a separate device. They were a precise blueprint for a way to interact with the sphere. The schematic was not the power source itself. It was the key to activating the power source. The sphere was the device, a passive kinetic energy harvester that had been collecting and storing the city's natural vibrations for over a century. It had been left there by Mr. Abernathy, waiting for the right person with the right plan to find it. "This," Walter said, a triumphant smile spreading across his face, "is the greatest hope. It's clean power. It's a way to reverse the damage we saw in that future. And it was here all along, waiting for us to figure out the puzzle." With a new sense of purpose, the team carefully retrieved the sphere and the schematic. They had not only honored Mr. Abernathy, but had taken the first crucial step towards securing a better future for their city. Walter Tipton, the once broken man, was now a hero in his own right, and his journey had come full circle. The pawn shop was no longer just a business. It was now the launching point for missions that would not only change the past, but protect the future. And Walter was an essential part of it all. The end of Chapter 9.
Give it a like, will ya?
Frases em bloco de interesse para o capítulo 9, Chunk Phrases of Interest for Chapter 9. Número 1. Confidente de confiança. A trusted confidant. A trusted confidant. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma pessoa com quem se compartilham assuntos pessoais ou secretos, confiando que ela não trairá essa confiança. This chunk phrase refers to a person with whom one shares personal or secret matters, trusting them not to betray that confidence. Example Português. Tomás havia encontrado em Walter confidente de confiança. Example English. Thomas had found in Walter a trusted confidant. Thomas had found in Walter a trusted confidant. Número 2. O espírito aventureiro. A sense of adventure. A sense of adventure. Esta frase em bloco se refere a sentimento de empolgação e entusiasmo pela exploração do desconhecido. This chunk phrase refers to a feeling of excitement and enthusiasm for exploring the unknown. Example português. Os meninos e Thomas, tomados por novo espírito aventureiro, definiram as coordenadas. Example English. The boys and Thomas, filled with a new sense of adventure, set the coordinates. The boys and Thomas, filled with a new sense of adventure, set the coordinates. Número 3. Uma paisagem futurista. A futuristic landscape. A futuristic landscape. Esta frase em bloco se refere a cenário que é avançado ou diferente do presente. This chunk phrase refers to a setting that is advanced or different from the present time. Example, português. A casa era uma relíquia em uma paisagem que de resto era futurista. Example, English. The house was a relic in an otherwise futuristic landscape. The house was a relic in an otherwise futuristic landscape. Número 4. Uma fonte de energia autossustentável. A self-sustaining power source. A self-sustaining power source. Esta frase em bloco se refere a sistema ou dispositivo que gera sua própria energia sem entrada externa ou com dependência mínima de recursos externos. This chunk phrase refers to a system or device that generates its own energy without external input or with minimal reliance on outside resources. Example, português. Era projeto para uma fonte de energia autossustentável. Example, English. It was a design for a self-sustaining power source. It was a design for a self-sustaining power source. Número 5. Pão fresco. Fresh baked bread. Fresh baked bread. Esta frase em bloco se refere a pão recém-feito e ainda quente, geralmente com aroma agradável. This chunk phrase refers to bread that has been recently made and is still warm, often with a pleasant aroma. Example português, ele ignorou até mesmo o cheiro do pão fresco que Marta havia assado. Example English, he ignored even the smell of Martha's fresh-baked bread. He ignored even the smell of Martha's fresh-baked bread. Número 6. Conjunto de habilidades. A skill set. A skill set. Esta frase em bloco se refere a conjunto de diferentes habilidades, talentos e conhecimentos que uma pessoa possui. This chunk phrase refers to a collection of different abilities, talents, and expertise that a person possesses. Example português. Ele era uma mente indispensável com conjunto de habilidades único. Example English. He was an indispensable mind with a unique skill set. He was an indispensable mind with a unique skill set. Número 7. Uma unidade coesa. A cohesive unit. A cohesive unit. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma equipe de pessoas que trabalham juntas de forma eficaz e harmoniosa. This chunk phrase refers to a team of people that work together effectively and harmoniously. Example, português. A equipe, agora uma unidade coesa, olhou para o mapa. Example, English. The team, now a cohesive unit, looked at the map. The team, now a cohesive unit, looked at the map. Número 8. Deslocamento sísmico. A seismic shift. A seismic shift. Esta frase em bloco se refere a uma mudança ou movimento significativo e repentino da crosta terrestre, que geralmente resulta em terremoto. This chunk phrase refers to a significant and sudden change or movement of the Earth's crust, often resulting in an earthquake. Example português. A torre foi desativada devido a deslocamento sísmico. Example English. The tower was decommissioned because of a seismic shift. The tower was decommissioned because of a seismic shift. Número 9. Os desafios logísticos. The logistical challenges. The logistical challenges. Esta frase em bloco se refere às dificuldades práticas de executar plano. This chunk phrase refers to the practical difficulties of carrying out a plan. Example, português. Ele havia previsto os desafios logísticos da próxima missão. Example, English. He had anticipated the logistical challenges of their next mission. He had anticipated the logistical challenges of their next mission. Número 10. A cerca de arame. The chain link fence. The chain link fence. Esta frase em bloco se refere a tipo de cerca feita de arame de aço entrelaçado, frequentemente usada para cercar propriedades. This chunk phrase refers to a type of fence made from interwoven steel wire, often used to enclose property. Example, português. Eles contornaram a cerca de arame. Example, English. They bypassed the chain link fence. They bypassed the chain link fence. Número 11. O piso de concreto. The concrete floor. The concrete floor. Esta frase em bloco se refere a piso sólido e duro, feito de uma mistura de cimento, agregado e água. This chunk phrase refers to a solid hard floor made of a mixture of cement, aggregate, and water. Example, português. A escotilha estava embutida no piso de concreto. Example English. The hatch was embedded in the concrete floor. The hatch was embedded in the concrete floor. Número 12. Uma esfera de metal. A metal sphere. A metal sphere. Esta frase em bloco se refere a objeto redondo e tridimensional feito de metal. This chunk phrase refers to a round, three-dimensional object made of metal. Example, português. Havia uma única esfera de metal, sem nada de especial. Example, English. There was a single, unremarkable metal sphere. There was a single, unremarkable metal sphere. Número 13. Por mérito próprio. In his own right. In his own right. Esta frase em bloco se refere à virtude das próprias qualificações, esforços ou mérito, e não à associação com outra pessoa. This chunk phrase refers to the virtue of one's own qualifications, efforts, or merit, rather than through association with someone else. Example: Walter Tipton agora era herói por mérito próprio. Example, English. Walter Tipton was now a hero in his own right. Walter Tipton was now a hero in his own right. Fim das frases em bloco de interesse para o capítulo 9. The end of chunk phrases of interest for Chapter 9.
We hope that by listening to the story and reviewing the chunk phrases of interest, you've had a chance to increase your English vocabulary in an enjoyable way. If you enjoyed this chapter and want to continue your journey with Ethan and his time-hopping adventures, please subscribe to the Chunking to Fluency channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Feel free to share this video with anyone who might enjoy it or is learning English. And don't forget to give it a like. Finally, if you hit the notification bell icon, you'll be sure to know when the next chapter of time-hopping hero Ethan's First Leaps is released. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to sharing more stories with you soon. Be blessed.